GMTK Game Jam. Make a game in 48 hours. Let's go. I was lucky enough to catch the theme reveal live on stream, and I was really excited to get started.
This year, for 2021, the theme is Joined Together.
So with that theme, I was super excited to get to work, and I started brainstorming a few ideas on my whiteboard. One of the things I like to do straight out of the gate is use just a couple of my knee-jerk reactions and write them down. So while I was launching a new Unity project and getting that set up, I decided to sketch out just a couple of my basic ideas. My original idea was something like Ice Climbers was a knee-jerk reaction with fire, hot, cold, and swinging each other up as a 2D platformer, but I really thought that theme was going to be overused, and so I eventually settled on a 2D platformer game where you could transfer objects between two different worlds. I was originally going to do like a Mrs. Pac-Man, Mr. Pac-Man, maybe I'm changing characters in between different worlds, but I eventually settled on a simple wizard design, something that I felt like I could draw with my tablet, something that wasn't overly complicated. I'm very new with drawing and trying to put together some of my own art assets, but at the end of the day, I'm actually really happy with how this came together. So once I got that done in Photoshop, I went ahead and spiced it up in a couple different layers and imported it into my Unity project and got the character looking good at essentially a close to ratio size that I thought was going to make sense for the game. Once I had that in a place that I felt like was sufficient for the game jam, I went ahead and rigged up a pretty basic 2D character controller that I've used for a couple of my other games. It's a fairly popular character controller from Brackeys, was able to copy paste that into my project and modify it with another player movement script to give it the movement that I really wanted to achieve. Once that was set up, I decided it was time to try and get objects moving with the wand with a left mouse click function. So I put that together with some get mouse button up and down methods, and once I got that working, it was time to get the effect of the wand flashing and dazzling away. I haven't done a lot with custom particle effects, so this was also a good exercise in learning a little bit more about that. Probably the biggest issue or hurdle that I ran into this project was I was stuck for a pretty solid hour with the particle effect system. I was having an issue where I couldn't get the sprite particle effect to render properly from one direction as I flipped on the x-axis with the character controller. I eventually got that working and it was time to move on. One of my favorite things I did in this project was create some of my own sweet sound effects. Next up was creating some more environment platforms. I basically ripped off Blackthorn Prod in some of his tutorial videos, and a huge thank you to him. I've watched a lot of his tutorials recently, but not only on programming, but also some of his getting started with art tutorials that have really helped me a lot and kind of helped start direct me with my own direction. We created some platforms and we got some cute little mushrooms going as well for the light world, and I'm pretty happy with how everything started turning out. I thought it would be cool that as you transfer between worlds, the mushrooms and the skulls would toggle back and forth between kind of the light and the dark worlds. So I went ahead and created some rocks and some skulls to toggle back and forth in between the two worlds, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I wanted to update the back area with a light and dark world theme, so I took the time to create some sky for the light world and this kind of dark, ominous look for the background, and I think it came together quite well. Once I got those toggling back and forth, I set up a couple different environment effects just to give the level a little bit more depth, and I think it looked pretty good. For the next level, I wanted to create a simple spring effect. It reminded me of an old childhood game that I used to play called something like The Amazing Invention, where you would create all of these different obstacles and springs to get yourself through the level, almost like a mousetrap type game. After I got the spring up and working, I was pretty happy with the effect, and it was time to create some more levels to get a little bit more depth to the game. I wanted to add a little bit more effect to toggling in between the worlds, so I created a alive green plant for the light world, and also a brown dark plant for the dark world that I could toggle back and forth. It would have been cool to change the platforms as well in between like alive grass and dead grass, but I didn't quite have the time for that, so I was happy with what I had. For the last level, I went ahead and created a bomb sprite that I could use to basically blow up some different platforms. I imported a couple different PNG bomb sprites that I could use and turned it into this matching style with the same color scheme. And I was running out of time on my last day, so I quickly created the fifth and last world for this game jam. And I came up with this simple bomb blow up mechanic to get across the path. And I think it actually turned out quite well. One of the last things was to create a fire bomb sprite for the explosion of the bomb. And once I got that working, we were just about wrapped up with the level creation design. Last but not least, I created a custom cursor sprite to add a little bit more immersion to the game instead of the default white cursor, and I think that turned out pretty well. One of the very last things to do was to get my non-gamer wife a tutorial playthrough to make sure everything was working smoothly, and she tackled it pretty well. That's it. I will leave an itch.io link in the description where you can play it directly in your browser. I will also be turning this game into a quest for GameDev.tv so that you can learn how to better program your games in Unity. Be sure to check that out if you're interested, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon.